And Sean is with us now. Hi, Sean.
Hey Joe.
Molde.
Molde, the next on the list. Yeah, February. Obviously Shamrock Rovers played them in this competition in what was the group stage 2 years ago. Lost both home and away, so they'll be familiar with that opposition. So yeah, Shamrock Rovers fans will be booking their flights to Norway in the next couple of days.
And not that we expect you to be our designated Norwegian correspondent, but Molde now versus 2 years ago, Rovers now versus 2 years ago. I mean, it's hard not to take some encouragement from the fact that in this Conference League table, Rovers go through to the knockout stages in 10th place, whereas Molde finished 23rd.
Yeah, like Molde only taken 7 points out of a possible 15, absolutely scraping into the playoff places, 23rd, as you said. But just looking back to 2 years ago, I was looking at it there earlier in the leg in Norway. Stephen Bradley kind of rested a few kind of key first team players, the likes of Jack Byrne, Roberto Lopez. They end up losing that 3-0, and he pretty much in Tala then a couple of weeks later played a full strength side, and they were done by an offside goal. It was clearly offside. I think it might have been Fofana midway through the first half, clearly offside, conceded the second in the second half, and lost both. But I think what we've seen with this Shamrock Rovers side over the last couple of years, they have a lot of European experience under their belt now. That game against Chelsea on Thursday night was Stephen Bradley's 51st European game in charge. They have become a little more streetwise. They know how to handle the game. They know how to, get a result, sit back when you need to, and other times when they're able to express themselves going forward. They are a little bit more streetwise now, and obviously that comes with experience. So, yeah, it's an absolutely massive playoff coming up now in February, and obviously not forgetting that those two legs come in between the small matter of Bows at the Aviva on the Sunday, so it'll be quite the 7 days for Rovers.
Yeah, it does kickstart the new season with a certain intensity, that's for sure. So the Stamford Bridge experience, had you been at the stadium before?
I have, yeah, a
Yeah.
couple of times.
I always think it looks like
Um,
a kind of traditional atmospheric stadium. I always like it. I know eventually it will be replaced by something shiny and new and kind of bowl-like. But for the time being, I'm a fan of Stamford Bridge. Do you like it?
I do, yeah. I think the people in charge, previous regime and the current owners have tried or have put forward plans to redevelop the ground. They're kind of hamstrung in Stamford Bridge because there's a big building block for veterans around the corner, and then the other side is a cemetery beside a train line. So it is quite squeezed in. It's very hard to redevelop. But just yeah, as a ground, it's kind of funny. I know what you're saying about kind of it'd be one of the you think of Chelsea, billionaire back Chelsea, you think they'd have a shiny, brand spanking new stadium, but it is a bit dated. Like their main stand, the East Stand, has been there since the 80s. But kind of talking to a couple of the journalists who covered the Chelsea beat, they were kind of saying how the atmosphere isn't great a lot of the time. They have a lot of older fans and a lot of tourists, kind of day trippers coming in. As well, so you wouldn't have that. Like they don't have that big cop end, that big Stretford end. You know what I mean?
Mm.
The atmosphere can be hit and miss. But last night, geez, the atmosphere was brilliant. There was the whole back and forth between the Chelsea fans and the Shamrock Rovers fans. A few choice chants by the Shamrock Rovers fans, which UEFA may be having a look at now in the aftermath. But yeah, the 3,000 Shamrock Rovers fans packed into the shed end certainly enjoyed themselves and made their voices heard.
Yeah. What's the general thrust of the more memorable Rovers fans? Is this about monarchs in a box and that kind of variety?
Yeah. Certain chants about the royal family and other uh, Anglo-Irish related chants, I suppose you could say. So yeah, we'll wait and see if anything potential fines come out of that from UEFA. But there was obviously a large police presence around the ground ahead of the game. I didn't see any trouble. I think the only kind of trouble that came from the Rovers fans' point of view was the long rolls of white tape that were thrown at Christopher Nkunku about 5 minutes in. He kind of stood with his hands on his hips for 2-3 minutes saying, geez, I've never seen anything like this before. The game was stopped. They eventually got that off the pitch. In terms of on the pitch, there'll be a little bit of regret from a Rovers point of view. They absolutely gifted Chelsea those first 2 goals. Marquis getting the first two really sloppy errors at the back. The first a miscommunication, and then the second from Dan Cleary, just a totally undercooked back pass. But I was writing about it before the match. Obviously, they were really up against it. David versus Goliath. Billionaire backed Chelsea. The first time Chelsea ever played an Irish side in competitive action. But from a Rovers point of view and their fans, they just wanted one moment that they can take home. And that came Marcus Poon with the goal via a deflection, you should say. But the class of 2011 had their moment at White Hart Lane with Stephen Rice, and now the class of 2024 have their moment. It's a pretty cool story. I was writing about it on the Irish Independence website today. Marcus Poon, his wife, Rebecca, welcomed their first child, a baby girl, Matilda, just 7 days ago. And after their game against Borac, he had to make a late dash. He booked the first ticket on a plane to Estonia, spent a few days with them. And he was kind of speaking to us after how he was chatting to his wife, and they were deciding, will he go back for the Chelsea game, will he won't? And he said, if it was any other game, he would have stayed with his family, but his wife told him, no, you can't give up this chance at Stamford Bridge. And safe to say, paid off.
Yeah, I did see the old rocking the cradle celebration. I thought, okay, there's something going on.
Such a class.
And that was a moment, because that made it 1-1, and it was just 4 minutes after Chelsea had scored the opener, which, as you said, was self-inflicted. So in that brief moment, you thought, wow, could this be one of these weird special nights, that maybe they do have a puncher's chance? And of course they didn't. And perhaps that Dan Cleary mistake that you referenced for the second goal, the pass back, I thought maybe more than any of the moments, that underlined just the step up. That's the kind of back pass. If Dan Cleary was playing against Chelsea level opposition for the next 2-3 weeks, he would quickly learn, these guys are sharper, they're quicker, they see things, they read things, they react to things. Those kind of passes, I can get away with them domestically or against lesser opposition in Europe. Not with the big boys, you don't. And it was just that moment. He wouldn't do it again, but I think it comes from almost not playing at that level routinely and not having a sense of what's allowable and what's not allowable. And Stephen Bradley said afterwards, I know we're talking about Rovers being more streetwise, that did desert them last night. He said, you just can't make basic mistakes. We did that tonight. And that, I don't think Rovers will feel they were in any way unlucky. Chelsea are obviously, even this Chelsea, second or third string, are a better side than Rovers. But you would prefer to be beaten in a different way.
Yeah, I know it's stating the obvious, but the press box is quite close to the sideline and the dugout at Stamford Bridge.
Yeah.
And we were really close to the action. And I know it's stating the obvious, but those Chelsea players, oh my God, they're just, I've never seen anything like it. They're just a step above world-class footballers. Like I was writing in the second half, Maresca turns to the bench, brings on João Felix, a player who has accumulated, I think, 180, 190 million euros worth of transfer fees over the years. They were second in the Premier League, so it's stating the obvious to say they're a different class. As you said, you might get away with a moment like that in the League of Ireland. But yeah, as you said, the floodgates opened then, and it was just a case of damage, a limitation then. So it's unfortunate.
Which, to be fair, they did limit the damage second half. I'm sure Chelsea met them halfway and took the foot off the pedal a little bit, but still.
Yeah, for sure. And Maresca signaled before the game that he was going to give the youngsters a run out. He gave 5 debuts the week before, and he stayed true to his word. But even it doesn't matter if it's a Chelsea second string side or even a third string side, they were a class above. And Stephen Bradley speaking after, he says, against this level of opposition, you have to be flawless. And he was saying about the silly mistakes. So there will be learnings from this game, obviously. So the result definitely wasn't one to remember, but the occasion was like, this is a moment those players will remember for the rest of their lives. Neil Ferrugia childhood Chelsea fan. Stephen Bradley, of course, playing a bit of youth football there, and all his family Chelsea fans. He was talking before the game. Incredible moment. I know Dan was talking a couple of weeks ago how he was out in Vienna, took in Rovers 1-1 draw there, and just sitting in the stadium, big European night, proper pitch, proper stadium. Obviously, it's Stamford Bridge. That's all the same. You're kind of looking around, just thinking, this is phenomenal. Like, League of Ireland side coming to Stamford Bridge off the back of 5 games unbeaten, playoff already secured. Like, that's absolutely unprecedented for a League of Ireland team to have a trip to Stamford Bridge in the final game of the campaign and have the hard work already done. So they were able to savor it, really enjoy it, although result aside. It's been a stunning achievement for this Shamrock Rovers side under Stephen Bradley. Obviously, the 5 in a row in the league wasn't to be, but they've put that disappointment behind them and made more history. And all eyes will turn towards February now to see if they can go one step further.
Yeah, remarkable. And it was, it is strange to see the scenes we saw at full time when you've lost 5-1, but we saw them nonetheless for obvious reasons, the reasons you've just detailed. It's been an extraordinary European campaign. It has surpassed all expectations. They have been brilliant on several occasions to dig in and hold on and weather difficult periods in games and then score decisive moments. So it's been absolutely exceptional, and you could see players receiving like standing ovation and then some from fans afterwards. So an amazing finale to a difficult 90 minutes. On Bradley, obviously his stock is rising, and we've seen the links with the Millwall job. I was reading your piece from the press conference the night before the game. I guess he understandably has a way of kind of bringing everyone quickly back down to earth and reminding everybody what's important, because when he's asked about all this speculation, he seems to be very firm, Sean, that his priority is the treatment of his son, who obviously, as we know, has been far from well, and therefore Dublin and home, these are the priorities right now. So links with Millwall might look very grandiose as we're talking about them, but he's got a very different focus at the moment.
Yeah, 100%. He spoke absolutely brilliantly on the eve of the match about his son's situation and how, like, he has been approached about a couple of jobs in the last 18 months, as he said himself. And obviously the Millwall story broke during the week. I know you guys in the pod were chatting about it during the week.
And on paper, hugely attractive.
Huge, and yeah, not just down the road from Stamford Bridge, Millwall, of course, but make no mistake about it, he was clear where his priority lies. His family, his son Josh, who were all at the game at Stamford Bridge, which was absolutely amazing. So there's no doubt that probably, obviously at the moment, his stock is the highest it's ever been, finishing 10th out of the 36 team league table, going 5 games unbeaten. Coming into the final day, there was only 3 teams remaining unbeaten after 5 games. That was Chelsea, Rovers, and Vitória, aside from Portugal. Absolutely unprecedented achievements for a League of Ireland side. And not to mention the financial rewards there. Their European pot stands at 5.5 million. That's set to rise even further now in February. But just in terms of Bradley, of course, his stock has never been higher. But he definitely made it clear where his priority has laid since his son took ill, and where his priority will be until he makes a recovery, as we all hope.
Yeah,
and he's on plan for.
Yeah, I think he did reference that the treatment is coming to an end. Which
I think he said thankfully and hopefully.
Yes.
The treatment's coming to an end. So it goes without saying, we wish him all the best.
Yeah, everyone echoes that. I suppose the other aspect to point out about this campaign is because Irish football, calendar-wise, is slightly out of sync with the majority of major European leagues. The playoff round to make the last 16 is a new calendar year, and for Rovers that means quite a few players have the potential to leave. Who is likely to leave? What are we hearing? How different might the Rovers starting 11 look come February?
Yeah, there'll definitely be a couple of faces missing from the team we would have seen over the first 6 games of the Conference League campaign. It was kind of a moment midway through the second half. Neil Ferrugia and Johnny Kenny were both taken off at the same time. Johnny Kenny obviously enjoying a fabulous season, 20 goals. He was the Conference League joint top scorer coming into the final game against Chelsea. He returns to his parent club Celtic next month. Stephen Bradley's desperate to keep him, but I spoke to Johnny last week after the win over Borac. He scored 2 goals in that one, and he made it pretty clear his focus was on Celtic. He wants to achieve his dream, earn his chance under Brendan Rodgers, and that's where his eyes are at the moment. But Neil Ferrugia, there's a lot of interest around him at the moment as well. The ex-Ireland under-21 international, he's put himself right in the shop window in this Conference League campaign. And after that win over Borac last week, I also spoke to Neil, and he said it's just a case of wait and see. He had party line, uncontroversial. He's just going to focus on Chelsea and see what happens after that. But there'll be a whole host of clubs lining up to attract his signature. There's a couple of others out of contract as well. Marcus Poom, of course, who I mentioned, spoke to him at Stamford Bridge last night, and he said he's going to hold discussions with Rovers over the next couple of weeks and see where his next step is. He's on loan from Flora Talon, and he returns there soon now over Christmas. Richie Towell is another one. I don't think he's featured since that league game against Shelburne, where he was seen going into the tunnel. Rovers made all their substitutions, and it was clear he wasn't going to come on. There was a moment when he kind of flung his shin pads and stormed down the tunnel. He was dropped for the next couple of games for disciplinary reasons. Stephen McPhail told me, and he looks to be on his way out as well. So there are a couple of names. I know Stephen Bradley last night was saying that picture will become clearer over the next 2 or 3 weeks. So for this new campaign, new League of Ireland season, and that playoff round for the last 16, we might see a couple of new faces, and there'll be a couple of faces missing. Obviously, Danny Grant, they're set to register him in January for the new campaign too. So yeah, a little bit of change expected at Rovers for sure.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure he wouldn't advocate being reckless, but I would also think that the football manager in Stephen Bradley is thinking, I can't help but notice we've generated millions and millions of euro over the last couple of weeks. It would be very handy for us to go and spend some of that on some high quality players. And why don't we dream big for Europe? And why don't we dominate Irish football and European football? Continue doing things in European football for years to come. Is there any sense of how, or to what extent, Rovers might be willing to splash some of this cash?
We'll have to wait and see. Obviously, they've done extremely well. That pot stand of 5.5 million euro, although those chances at Stamford Bridge might take off a few bob off that. The hearing from Bradley the last week or two, the intention is that they're going to sign a couple of players. Obviously, recently enough, Danny Grant, Mark McNulty coming in as well. I know Dara Burns played Stamford Bridge last night. He's set to return to MK Dons, but the feeling is that they will push to bring him on a permanent move as well. So we'll have to wait and see, but they're definitely not short of a few bob if that becomes an issue in negotiations.
Yeah, I guess the other issue is the backdrop with ownership. As a final thought, there's a certain irony that they're having this unprecedented joy in Europe. Meanwhile, Stephen Bradley is taking to programme notes to express his unhappiness with the ownership situation. It seems to be a regular theme in interviews. They're the kind of fan-based owners, and then 25% apiece with 2 different private owners. The sense seems to be Bradley has sided with the private ownership, but there's all kinds of rankling going on there. Is that likely to come to a head in some kind of a way, Sean, in the short term, or is it very possible that just continues indefinitely?
I know Daniel was writing about it last week. I think at the club's AGM, it was the hostile atmosphere and the conversations that needed to be had. It wasn't as hostile as expected. It was pretty pleasant's not the right word, but the outcome was positive for all concerned. I know there's changes to the rules in terms of the AGM, and certain rules they're going to rewrite as well to ease the concerns the members 50% side had. So I think at the moment it looks to be improving. I know Dan was writing about it as well. Bradley's relationship with some individuals has probably deteriorated over the last couple of years, and obviously we saw his program notes before the Borac game paying tribute to Dermot Desmond as well. So yeah, we'll have to wait and see. But I think at the moment it seems to be okay, and obviously the results are one thing as well, and they get through that Molde tie, and it'll be kind of hard to argue when they've made more history.
Well, absolutely. I guess in the short term they can go and enjoy Christmas dinner on Extraordinary European Campaign.
2 weeks off, yeah. It's been that Chelsea game last night was exactly 1 year and 1 day since their pre-season preparations began. So it's been an incredibly long season. They'll enjoy a well-deserved couple of weeks off now. But obviously we saw Shelbourne return to pre-season training a few days ago, and I'm sure other clubs are the same as well. So you won't find it coming around too fast.
No, 13th of February they'll be in Molde for the first leg, and then Tala on the 20th, and as you said, Bowes at the Aviva in between. So extraordinary
quiet week
coming up for them, to say the very, very least. Sean, that's great. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Joe.